Have you ever felt alive but already forgotten? What would you do if the people you trusted the most started treating you like you were already gone? This is the story of how I lost everything and how I got it all back on my own terms. Stay with me, and don't forget to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. I always thought the worst thing that could happen to a person was death. I was wrong. The worst thing is being alive and realizing no one cares if you are. My name is Martha Reynolds. I'm 84 years old, born and raised in a little town in Illinois. I used to be strong, fierce even, the kind of woman who ran a household, balanced a checkbook to the penny, and held family dinners every Sunday without fail. But life has a way of peeling away your layers when you get old, slowly, quietly, until you're just a burden. I still had my mind. Oh, don't think for a second I didn't know exactly what was happening around me. It was my body that betrayed me. A slow, cruel decline from the moment they diagnosed me with that damned degenerative disease. Arthritis, heart failure, tiny strokes that left me weaker each time. But my mind, sharp as ever. At first, my children, David, Lisa, and Michael, came around often enough. Lisa would bring her kids, David would sit with me in the afternoons, and Michael, well, he always had an excuse. Work, stress, you name it. But I convinced myself it was enough, until I noticed the changes. The visits became shorter, more distracted. The conversations, less about me and more about things. Or things I owned, things they wanted. I guess Mom won't be needing that china cabinet much longer, I overheard Lisa say once, laughing nervously. David talked about selling the house to help cover costs. Michael mentioned power of attorney. Just to help with the bills, Mom, nothing serious. I smiled. I nodded. I said yes to their faces and cried when they left, because even though I was still breathing, still feeling, still here, they were already dividing me up. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was inventory. One evening, after they'd left, I sat in my living room, alone with the clock ticking too loudly on the wall. I looked at the photographs, birthdays, graduations, weddings, moments when I mattered, when I wasn't just a body in a chair. I realized then, in that hollow silence, that my fight wasn't against my illness. It was against invisibility. They forgot that I built the ground they walked on. They forgot who made their Christmas mornings magical, who sat up with them through fevers and heartbreaks, who sacrificed every dream for their comfort. And now, they wanted the couch I bought, the jewelry I wore, the house I cleaned, the money I saved, but not me. Not really. I wasn't ready to let go yet, but it didn't seem to matter anymore. At night, I'd lie in bed, listening to the house creak and moan, and wonder if it was crying with me. Maybe it knew what I refused to admit. I was becoming a ghost in my own life, the kind of ghost no one notices until it's too late. And the worst part? I still loved them. Despite everything, that was my curse. But curses, I would soon learn, could be broken, and mine was just getting started. After months of half-hearted visits and quick goodbyes, it happened. A Sunday afternoon, the kind we used to spend laughing around the dinner table, now reduced to tense conversations over lukewarm coffee. David was the one who said it first. Mom, we've been thinking, maybe it's time we got you some help, a professional caregiver, someone who can be here full-time. Lisa chimed in, trying to soften the blow. You deserve proper care, Mom. We can't be here all the time. You know how busy things have been lately. Busy. Always so busy. Too busy to sit with me. Too busy to listen. Michael just nodded, staring at his phone, barely pretending to care. I sat there, nodding along like a good little patient, as if I had any say. Inside, I felt something crack, but I was tired. Tired of fighting battles no one else even saw. Whatever you think is best, I said. My voice barely more than a whisper. They smiled, relieved. David patted my hand like I was some worn-out pet. Lisa started scrolling through her phone immediately, listing agencies and reviews. Michael said something about splitting the cost. They spoke around me, over me, but never to me. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was their responsibility. As they planned, I stared at the vase on the coffee table. It was a wedding gift from my mother. Delicate, beautiful. It had survived decades of moves, fights, laughter, and life. Now it sat in front of me, just like I did, fragile, forgotten, and at risk of being discarded. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I thought about my husband, Jack. God, how I missed him. He would have known what to do. He would have fought for me. But Jack had been gone for 15 years, and the kids I raised weren't those bright-eyed babies anymore. They were busy, tired adults, weighed down by mortgages, deadlines, and dreams that no longer included me. I became scenery, a chair in the corner, a reminder of mortality they preferred not to look at for too long. The worst part was the shame. I hated myself for needing them, for wishing they'd stay just a little longer, for hoping, foolishly, that maybe today would be different. It never was. And then, one Thursday morning, I heard Lisa on the phone. "Claire will be starting next week," she said, her voice tight and efficient. "She comes highly recommended. Full-time coverage. That should take care of everything. Take care of everything." Like I was a chore on a checklist, I stood quietly in the hallway, listening. Not a single word about how I might feel. Not a single thought about what I wanted. The only thing I knew for sure was that the next chapter of my life was no longer mine to write, or so I thought. But life, as I would soon find out, had other plans. The morning Claire arrived, the house felt colder than usual. Maybe it was just me, my nerves, the aching truth that even my own children had decided I needed a stranger to care for me. Or maybe it was the way the light hit the kitchen table, dust swirling in the air like tiny ghosts of everything I was losing. The doorbell rang. Lisa answered before I could even think about getting up. And then, there she was, Claire. Young, much younger than I expected. Maybe late 20s with kind eyes and a warm, open smile that didn't seem forced like everyone else's. She wore simple jeans, a soft sweater, and her brown hair was tied back in a loose ponytail. No heavy makeup, no fake sweetness dripping from her voice. Just real. "Hi, Mrs. Reynolds," she said, stepping inside like a breeze. "I'm Claire. It's so nice to meet you." Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't pitying. It was kind, calm, human. Lisa did all the talking, of course, bustling around, explaining schedules and medications like she was dropping off a package, not a person. I barely listened. I just watched Claire, and she watched me, really watched me. Not my wheelchair, not the pill bottles on the counter. Me. After Lisa left, with her usual flurry of keys jangling and promises to check in later, the house went quiet. Claire turned to me and smiled, not the professional plastic smile I'd come to expect, but something warmer. "Mind if I sit with you for a bit?" she asked. No one had asked me that in a long time. I nodded. She pulled a chair close, not across the room like the others did, but right next to me, where she could lean in and talk like I was, well, like I was still worth talking to. At first, I was stiff, cautious. I answered her questions with short, polite replies. How long had I lived in this house? What was my favorite memory here? What kind of music did I like? Simple questions. But no one had asked me simple questions in years. They only asked about my insurance, my will, my health. Claire didn't rush. She listened, really listened. When I mentioned that I used to love dancing, she laughed and said, "You've got that sparkle, Mrs. Reynolds. I bet you were the life of the party." I surprised myself by smiling. We sat for hours, just talking. Or rather, I talked, and she made it feel like it mattered. Later that afternoon, as she prepared tea for us, she told me about herself. She grew up hard, she said. No father around. A mother who worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. She'd seen what loneliness did to people. She knew how easy it was to feel invisible. "I see a lot of myself in you," Claire said, setting the tea down gently beside me. "You're stronger than they give you credit for." My throat tightened. No one had said I was strong in a long, long time. That night, after she left, I sat by the window and looked out into the darkness. The house felt different, less like a tomb, more like a place where someone, still lived. For the first time in months, I didn't dread tomorrow. I found myself looking forward to seeing Claire again, to hearing her voice cut through the heavy silence. The next day she came back, and the next, and the next. Each visit, she brought something small, a flower from her walk, a new book she thought I'd like, a homemade cookie still warm from the oven. Tiny gestures, but they built a bridge back to something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. In the mornings, we would sit in the garden, sipping coffee as the sun warmed our faces. In the afternoons, we would play cards, laugh about the silly things, share stories that made me feel young again. When the pain got bad, she was there, not just with medicine, but with presence. When I cried, missing Jack or feeling the sting of abandonment, she listened without rushing me. With Claire, I wasn't a burden. I wasn't a problem to be managed. I was a person. One evening, as she tucked a blanket over my legs, she said quietly, "You're not alone, Mrs. Reynolds. Not while I'm here." And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I believed it. Maybe Claire wasn't just my caregiver. Maybe she was my second chance at not being forgotten. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day that should have meant nothing. The sun poured through the windows, golden and warm, and for a moment, everything almost felt normal. Claire had made lunch, chicken salad, soft bread, lemonade with too much sugar, just the way I liked it. We laughed about something silly she'd seen on the news. I remember feeling light, almost happy, and then everything tilted. One minute I was reaching for my glass, the next the room spun violently around me. My vision blurred. The chair fell away from under me. I heard Claire's voice, sharp with panic, calling my name. I tried to answer, but the words got stuck somewhere deep inside me. Then darkness, heavy, complete. When I opened my eyes, the world was a stranger. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and clinical. The walls around me were stark white. No familiar furniture, no pictures, no home. I blinked, trying to piece together where I was, what had happened. A nurse noticed I was awake and shuffled over. "Good morning, Martha. You're in Shady Grove Care Center. You've been here 2 days. Try not to move too much. Shady Grove Care Center." A name so sanitized, it made my stomach twist. I tried to sit up, panic rising like a flood, but my muscles were too weak. "Where's Claire?" I rasped, my throat dry as sand. "She's not allowed back here," the nurse said briskly, adjusting my IV. "Your children made the arrangements. They signed the consent forms. You'll be staying with us now." I stared at her, my mind racing to catch up. Arrangements? Consent forms? No one had told me. No one had asked me. I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my chest. When the nurse left, I scanned the room. No phone, no personal belongings. My purse, my cell phone, gone. Cut off, isolated. They didn't just move me, they erased me. Hours blurred into days. The food was tasteless, a mushy parade of beige. The nurses were polite but distant, mechanical in their kindness. No visitors, no calls, not even a single text from David, Lisa, or Michael. I had become what they always saw me as, a problem tucked neatly away. At night, the cries of other forgotten souls echoed down the sterile halls, old men shouting for wives long dead, women sobbing into threadbare pillows. It was a graveyard where the bodies still breathed. I pressed my hand against the cold metal of the bed rail and made myself a promise. I would not die here. I would not let them bury me alive. But as the hours dragged on, hope thinned, until one afternoon, just when I thought I might slip into the silence for good, a figure appeared at the door. Claire. She wasn't supposed to be there, but somehow she found me. She slipped inside quickly, pressing a finger to her lips to hush any questions. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear and fury. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Reynolds," she whispered, gripping my hand tightly. "They didn't even tell me. I came by the house and it was empty. I had to fight just to find out where they sent you." Tears welled up in my eyes. She was here. She still cared. "You still have rights," Claire said fiercely. "They can't just leave you here." For the first time since waking up in this whitewashed prison, I felt a spark inside me, a tiny, stubborn flame. I wasn't alone. Not yet. Claire promised she'd come back every day, that she'd find a way to get me out. I didn't know if I believed her, but I wanted to. I needed to. As she squeezed my hand one last time before slipping away again, I realized something. My family had abandoned me without a second thought. But somewhere out there, at least one person was still fighting for me. It wasn't the people who shared my blood. It was the one I least expected. And that small, impossible fact gave me enough strength to survive another night. The days at Shady Grove stretched out like endless gray ribbons. Mornings bled into afternoons, afternoons into long, sleepless nights. The clock on the wall seemed to move slower here, ticking out a sentence I hadn't agreed to serve. Most of the other residents barely spoke. Some stared blankly at the walls. Others cried out in confusion, lost in memories no one else could see. I became one of them. Another forgotten figure in a sea of wheelchairs and hospital gowns. My children? They didn't come. Not once. No cards, no phone calls, not even a voicemail. Maybe they thought I wouldn't notice. Maybe they didn't care if I did. But Claire showed up. Every single day. She wasn't allowed inside officially. Visitors were restricted, rules wrapped in red tape and polite apologies. But somehow, Claire found ways to sneak in. A friend who worked a shift, a nurse who owed her a favor. Each morning, like clockwork, I would hear a soft knock at my door, and there she'd be. Sometimes she brought books, old worn novels with cracked spines that smelled like home. Sometimes it was a crossword puzzle, or a candy bar hidden in her bag. Other times, it was just her presence. We would sit by the small, barred window, sharing the quiet. She'd read aloud, her voice soft and steady, weaving stories into the stale air. Or she'd just listen, really listen. I told her things I hadn't spoken aloud in years, about Jack, about our early days scraping by in a tiny apartment over a hardware store, about the first time I held David in my arms, scared out of my mind and happier than I'd ever been, about the loneliness that crept in when everyone else's lives moved on and mine stayed still. She made me feel seen. She made me feel real. Even small things, the way she adjusted my blanket without being asked, the way she smiled at me like I was still worth smiling at, wove tiny threads of hope back into my heart. I didn't realize it then, but those quiet, stolen afternoons with her were building something inside me. Something stronger than anger, stronger than grief. I might have been buried alive by the people I loved most, but with Claire beside me, I would claw my way out, and soon I would remind them all exactly who Martha Reynolds was. Freedom didn't come in a grand, triumphant moment. It came in paperwork, in quiet negotiations, in signatures scratched onto official documents that felt more like a resurrection than a release. Claire worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She spoke with doctors, pulled medical reports, consulted patient rights advocates. Turns out, you can't just toss a woman into a nursing home against her will, not if she's still lucid, still capable. It took weeks of waiting, hoping, and fighting the fear that it might all fall apart. But one cold Thursday morning, a caseworker handed me a stack of forms and said the words I never thought I'd hear. "You're being discharged, Mrs. Reynolds." I didn't cry. Not there, not where they could see me. But inside, I was screaming. Claire helped arrange everything. No way was I going back to the old house, the one my children had already started treating like a corpse awaiting burial. Instead, she suggested one of the apartments Jack and I had bought years ago as an investment, still untouched, still mine. The taxi ride to the apartment was a blur. My heart raced with a strange mix of terror and hope. Claire walked beside me, her hand light but steady on my arm. "You're free now," she whispered as we stepped out onto the cracked sidewalk. The building was old but sturdy, the red bricks chipped in places, the lobby heavy with the smell of floor polish and forgotten dreams. But it was mine, or so I thought. The key still fit the lock, the door creaked open, and what I found inside nearly dropped me to my knees. Stacks of paperwork littered the kitchen counter. Contracts, sale agreements, legal notices. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. Then Claire picked up a folder, flipping through it quickly. Her face hardened. "These are property sale agreements," she said, voice low and shaking. "And power of attorney documents. Look," she held up a page, "signed by you, except it's not your signature." "Is it?" I stared, my hands trembling. No, it wasn't. The handwriting was careful, practiced, but not mine. A poor imitation. The kind someone thought an old, forgotten woman wouldn't catch. Michael's name was everywhere. David's, too. And Lisa's husband, the lawyer. Of course, they had been busy. Arrangements were already underway to liquidate everything. The house, the apartments, the antiques. They hadn't even waited for me to die. They had buried me on paper, declared me dead with ink and lies. My legs gave out, and Claire caught me, helping me to the worn armchair by the window. The same kind of window I used to watch them leave from, back when I still believed they loved me. It all made sense now. They hadn't been caring for me. They had been managing their future assets. God, how blind I had been. I should have seen it coming. The way they looked at the house like it was a prize. The way they spoke of me in past tense when they thought I couldn't hear. The betrayal burned hotter than any fever. But beneath the grief, something harder took root. Something colder. Claire knelt beside me, her face fierce. "We can fix this," she said. You still have the power. You still have time. Time. A gift I never thought I'd have again. I closed my eyes, let the rage and pain wash over me, and then drew a deep, steadying breath. They stole my trust. They stole my dignity. But they would not steal my ending. Not while I still had a breath left to fight. The next morning, the first thing I did was call my lawyer. His name was Mr. Whitmore, a man I'd known for decades. He handled Jack's will after he died, helped me set up trusts for the kids when they were young. I trusted him, at least more than I trusted anyone else right now. When he answered, his voice was cautious, polite. "Martha, it's been a long time. Too long. I need to change my will," I said, my voice steady. Immediately, there was a pause. "There. Of course. Are you sure you want to?" "I'm sure," I cut him off. "Bring the paperwork. Today." Within hours, he was standing in the living room of that little apartment, papers tucked neatly into his leather briefcase. His face showed nothing, but I could feel the questions buzzing under his skin. He didn't ask them. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he had seen this kind of thing before. Families who picked the bones clean before the body was even cold. Claire sat quietly in the corner, her hands folded in her lap, face pale. She didn't know why I had called him. Not yet. I took a deep breath and began. "I want to revoke the old will completely. Wipe it clean." Whitmore nodded slowly, pulling out a thick folder. "And who will inherit your estate now?" he asked. I turned to Claire. She looked up at me, confusion flickering in her eyes. "She will," I said, my voice strong. Claire's mouth dropped open. "Mrs. Reynolds, no, I can't, you can't." She stumbled over the words, hands fluttering helplessly. "Yes, I can," I said firmly. "And I am." She tried again, standing up, tears already welling. "I never wanted anything from you. I just wanted you to be safe, to have someone." I reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "And you gave me that," I whispered. "You were the only one who stayed, the only one who listened, the only one who made me feel like I mattered when everyone else just wanted to forget me." She shook her head, tears slipping free. "I don't deserve—" "You do," I said, fierce now. "I'm not doing this out of gratitude, Claire. I'm doing it because I choose to, because you are family, whether you realize it or not." Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat gently. "I'll need you to sign here, Martha," he said, sliding the papers across the table. My hand trembled a little as I picked up the pen, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of the moment. I wasn't just changing a piece of paper. I was reclaiming my life. I was deciding for the first time in a long time who was worthy of the legacy Jack and I built from nothing. I signed each page carefully, deliberately. When it was done, Whitmore packed everything away, his expression unreadable. "It's official," he said. Claire sat back down heavily, her face pale with shock. I squeezed her hand again. "It's yours now," I said softly. "All of it." The family I birthed had chosen greed over love. Claire, a stranger, had chosen loyalty without expecting a single thing in return. And that mattered. It mattered more than blood, more than tradition, more than appearances. It mattered enough for me to rewrite the end of my story. Not as a victim, not as a forgotten relic, but as a woman who chose love, in whatever form it found her. The bitterness I felt for my children didn't wash away. It hardened, crystallized into something sharp and permanent. I wouldn't forget what they had done. I wouldn't forgive it either. But I would move forward without them, and I would make damn sure that, in the end, they would understand just how completely they had lost me. Because this time, it was my choice. And there was no going back. I wasn't about to let them hear it from a stranger. No, I wanted them to know it came straight from me, while I was still here, still breathing, still strong enough to watch them squirm. After the papers were finalized, I told Mr. Whitmore to call my children, arrange a meeting, bring them all into the same room. "I want them to know exactly what they lost," I said, my voice steady. "I want them to hear it while they can still look me in the eyes." He hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he nodded. The meeting was set for Saturday. The apartment buzzed with a kind of electric dread that morning. Claire sat beside me on the worn couch, her hands folded tightly, offering silent support. I wasn't scared. I was ready. For the first time in years, I would be the one holding the power. They arrived one by one. David first, looking harried and self-important in his suit. Lisa next, dragging along her husband, who carried a leather folder like a shield. And then Michael, 30 minutes late, sunglasses still perched on his head like he was doing me a favor just by showing up. They filed into the room, fake smiles plastered on their faces, the tension thick enough to choke on. Mr. Whitmore stood quietly by the window, waiting for my signal. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Let's get to it," I said. David cleared his throat, trying to set the tone. "We're just concerned, Mom. About your well-being." Lisa jumped in, voice syrupy sweet. "We heard you made some changes, maybe without fully understanding the implications." Michael crossed his arms, looking bored already. "Claire's been influencing you, hasn't she? We're your family. You can trust us." I almost laughed. Trust. They had sold my trust for pennies the second they put me in that hellhole. Instead, I leaned forward, my voice low and clear. "I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions. In fact, I've made a few you might find educational." Mr. Whitmore opened his briefcase and pulled out the new documents. "You have been removed from the will," I said, savoring each word. "Completely, entirely, irrevocably." They froze, disbelief and outrage twisting their faces into masks I barely recognized. Lisa found her voice first, shrill and cracking. "You can't do that! We're your children! We have a right! You had a responsibility!" I snapped, cutting her off. "And you failed." David stepped forward, palms up like he was reasoning with a lunatic. "Mom, come on. We did what we thought was best. You weren't safe at home." I met his eyes, letting him see every ounce of the betrayal I carried. "You sold my home. You stole my name. You decided I was dead before I ever stopped breathing." Michael snorted. "She's manipulating you. She's after your money." Claire stood up then, quiet but firm. "I never asked for a dime. I was here when you weren't. That's the difference." Lisa's husband tried to intervene, talking about contesting the will, guardianship proceedings, mental competency evaluations. I smiled coldly. "I've had full psychiatric clearance, medical reports, legal validation. You'll lose, and you'll lose, publicly." The room went silent. The realization hit them like a physical blow. There was nothing they could do. No tricks, no bargaining, no redemption. They had gambled, and they lost. I stood slowly, my body aching but my spirit sharp as a knife. "You spent years carving me up like a turkey at Thanksgiving," I said. "You couldn't even wait until I was cold. Now you get nothing. No second chances, no deathbed confessions, no closure." David looked like he might cry. Lisa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Good. I wanted them to feel it. Every ounce of the pain, the abandonment, the betrayal. "You made your choices," I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence. "And I've made mine." I turned to Claire, who stood quietly, tears glistening in her eyes. "This is my family now." Without another word, I pointed to the door. "Get out." They hesitated, stunned into silence, but when I didn't move, didn't flinch, they shuffled toward the exit. No hugs, no apologies, no last desperate pleas, just the sound of the door clicking shut behind them. I sank back onto the couch, feeling a bone-deep exhaustion, but also something else, freedom. I had spent so many years swallowing my pain, minimizing my hurt, pretending everything was fine. No more. They chose greed. I chose dignity. Claire sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. We didn't say anything. We didn't have to. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding on to memories of a family that didn't exist anymore. I was holding on to the future I chose, on my terms. A few days later, I began to feel weaker and my health started to decline. At first, I thought it was just the stress, the arguments, the betrayal, the endless legal meetings. It would wear anyone down, especially someone my age. The headaches started first, then the dizziness, nausea that came in violent waves, a bone-deep fatigue that no amount of rest could shake. Claire noticed, of course. She was always watching, always hovering with a glass of water and that same patient smile. "Here, Mrs. Reynolds, take your medication. It'll help." I trusted her. God help me, I trusted her more than I trusted anyone. So I took the pills she handed me, morning and night, without thinking twice. And every day, I got worse. It didn't make sense. The doctors at Shady Grove had said my condition was stable, that with proper care, I might even regain some of my strength. Instead, I was slipping back into that same helplessness I had fought so hard to escape. Something didn't add up. One afternoon, sitting by the window, I stared down at the little white pills Claire had placed in my hand. They looked off. different from what I remembered. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I closed my fingers around them instead of swallowing, slipping them into the pocket of my robe when Claire turned away. That night, I didn't take them. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the familiar panic rise. But morning came, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't wake up drowning in nausea. The headache was still there, a dull throb, but my mind felt clearer, stronger. I tested it again the next day. Skipped the pills, and again, better. Not perfect, not cured, but better. A chill ran through me. I started hiding the pills each time Claire brought them. I tucked them into an old tea tin in the back of the kitchen cabinet, counting each one carefully. After a few days, I compared them to the medications I had been prescribed at Shady Grove, the ones I kept locked in a drawer, untouched since I left. There were differences, tiny, subtle differences in the color of the capsules, the markings on the tablets, differences that a trusting, tired old woman might miss, but not anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the 2 sets of pills laid out in front of me. Side by side, the truth was impossible to ignore. Claire had been giving me something else, something that made me weaker, more dependent, more grateful for her help. My heart shattered in my chest. Claire, my savior, my friend, my only family, had been poisoning me. I wanted to believe there was some other explanation, some mistake, some misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew better. The realization clawed at me, leaving raw, bloody wounds where trust had once lived. I had let her in. I had given her everything. And now, I didn't know who she really was, but I intended to find out. Because if there was one thing I had learned, it was this. No one, not family, not friends, not even the ones who saved you, was above suspicion. Not when you had something they wanted, not when survival was the only thing left to fight for. The hardest part wasn't the waiting. It wasn't the pretending. It was smiling at Claire, or Rachel, or whatever her real name was, and acting like I was still the same foolish old woman who trusted her with everything. I knew I had to be careful. If she sensed anything, if she got even the slightest hint that the game was up, she'd be gone, just like that. So I put on my best performance. I smiled when she brought me tea. I nodded when she adjusted my pillows. I let her think I was still weak, still blind. And then, casually, I said, "You know, Claire, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time I met with Mr. Whitmore again. There are a few things I want to add to the will." Her face froze for a fraction of a second before she caught herself. "Oh, sure," she said too brightly. "I can call him for you. I'll handle it." I nodded, pretending to be grateful. But days passed, and no Mr. Whitmore. Every time I asked, Claire had a new excuse. "He's busy, Mrs. Reynolds. He said he'll call back." I left a message. "I'm sure he's just tied up." Lie after lie, wrapped in syrupy concern. I knew then. She wasn't going to let me reach him, not if she could help it, so I insisted. "I really want to finalize a few things for you, Claire," I said sweetly. "Some special instructions. I'd feel better knowing it's all taken care of." That seemed to ease her suspicion. Her greed overpowered her caution. The next morning, I called Mr. Whitmore myself, when Claire went out to run errands. My hands shook dialing the number, but I pressed through. When he picked up, I didn't waste a second. "I need you here tomorrow," I said. "Alone." He didn't argue. The next day, just after breakfast, Mr. Whitmore arrived. Claire made an excuse to go for a walk, thinking I was about to hand her the keys to my life. As soon as the door closed behind her, I turned to him. "I need to change everything," I said, my voice shaking with fury barely held in check. "And I need you to find out who she really is." Whitmore's face darkened instantly. "You suspect foul play?" he asked carefully. "I don't suspect," I said. "I know." He nodded once, decisive. "I'll start an investigation immediately. But Martha, if you think she's dangerous, you shouldn't stay alone with her." I smiled grimly. "I can handle one more day," I said, "and I want her to stay close. If she realizes I know, she'll disappear. I want her to pay for what she's done to me." Whitmore hesitated, but finally agreed. He left quickly, promising to move fast. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. Claire returned that afternoon, all smiles and concern, completely unaware of the trap closing around her. I played along, but inside, I counted the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and then, finally, the next morning, a sharp knock on the door. Mr. Whitmore stepped inside, his face grim. Claire was in the kitchen, humming, oblivious. He handed me a single sheet of paper. I read it once, twice, my hands clenched around the edges. Claire wasn't Claire at all. Her real name was Rachel Jennings, a con artist with a long, ugly history of targeting elderly people, lonely, vulnerable souls like me. She had drained bank accounts, forged documents, isolated her victims until there was no one left to save them, and I had given her everything. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced them down. Not now, not yet, because now I knew the truth, and now it was my turn to choose what came next. Mr. Whitmore leaned in close after handing me the report, his voice low and urgent. I've already contacted the authorities. The police are on their way. Mrs. Reynolds, stay calm. They'll handle it. I nodded, clutching the paper tightly in my lap. A part of me, a small, savage part, relished the idea of seeing her face when the police walked through that door. But life, as always, had other plans. From the kitchen I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a glass shattering on the floor. Then silence. Too much silence. I turned just in time to see Rachel, not Claire, bolt through the back door, her footsteps frantic against the cracked pavement. Gone. Just like that. Whitmore cursed under his breath and rushed to the phone, informing the police of her escape. But I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the door swinging in the cold morning breeze, feeling the betrayal settle deeper into my bones. Rachel Jennings, the woman I trusted with my life, a thief wearing the face of a savior. Whitmore came back, calmer now. It's all right, he said. We have everything we need. Witness testimonies, forged documents, surveillance footage from the pharmacy where she altered prescriptions. She won't get far. The case was handed off to the police, quietly. No sirens, no flashing lights, no public spectacle. Just cold, swift justice unfolding behind the scenes. I still had one more thing to do. I instructed Whitmore to remove Rachel, Claire, from the will immediately. I wasn't about to let a ghost inherit my life's work. The new paperwork was signed that same afternoon. Clear, final, and for my children, the ones who had thrown me away like yesterday's newspaper, I left something special. Not property, not money, not apologies. An envelope, a simple, unassuming envelope. Inside, a single note, handwritten in my neat, steady cursive. Don't worry about dividing what was mine. I've already taken care of it. No signatures, no explanations, just the cold truth, wrapped in finality. They wouldn't get a dime. Not because Rachel tricked me, not because of some stranger's betrayal, but because of their betrayal, because they abandoned me, because they let their greed outweigh their love, because I saw them for who they really were, and decided they weren't worthy of the legacy I had built. The apartment was silent again after Whitmore left, the kind of silence that didn't ache, didn't press down on my chest. It felt clean. It felt like victory. Rachel was gone. My children were gone. And for the first time in years, I was standing in the wreckage they left behind, not broken. Weeks slipped by like leaves in the wind, slowly at first, then faster as life found its rhythm again. I lived quietly, tucked away in that modest apartment, savoring each morning like it was a prize I had fought hard to win. And then, one bright Friday afternoon, Mr. Whitmore called. His voice held a rare note of satisfaction. Rachel Jennings has been arrested, he said, caught trying to pull the same scheme on another woman across town. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle deep inside me, not with bitterness, not with vengeance, but with peace. Justice had found her, not in a courtroom packed with reporters, not in some dramatic showdown, quietly, efficiently, completely, the way real justice should, the way I deserved. But that wasn't the only miracle. In the days that followed, something even more astonishing began to happen. I got better. At first, it was small things. I woke up without that crushing nausea. I could sit up longer, move more freely. My headaches lessened. The dizziness faded. The doctors were baffled. With the right medication, the real medication, with decent meals, real rest, and a life no longer poisoned by fear and betrayal, my condition stabilized. Stress can do more damage than we realize, the doctor said with a small, sheepish smile. But you, Mrs. Reynolds, you're tougher than most. Damn right, I thought. Within a few weeks, I was walking again. Slowly, carefully, but walking. I made my own coffee in the mornings, watered my plants, paid my bills, little victories that tasted sweeter than any grand celebration. I wasn't the frail, forgotten woman they had all left behind. I was Martha Reynolds, and I was still here, living, choosing, deciding, commanding. As for the inheritance, the fortune they once fought over like rabid dogs, it wouldn't go to children who measured my worth in dollars. It wouldn't go to a liar who wore kindness like a mask. No, it would go to causes that mattered, to shelters that housed the forgotten, to scholarships for girls like I once was, fierce, scared, desperate for a chance, to people who needed a hand to lift them, not a hand to take from them. I sat one evening by the window, watching the sun dip low over the city. The streets below buzzed with life, messy, loud, imperfect, just like me. I thought about Jack, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the hollow ache of his absence. I felt gratitude for the life we built, for the strength he taught me, for the voice he helped carve into my soul, a voice that had risen from the ashes, clear, unbreakable, still mine. I smiled to myself, the kind of smile that comes when you know, truly know, that you survived what was meant to destroy you. Not as a ghost, not as a victim, but as the woman I had always been, Martha Reynolds, alive, free, and finally, in control of my own ending. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.